I'm looking at Tim and Meg over here, and I'm thinking, they've been ascending all this time. I look at Marilyn, and I want to just give a little credit to Marilyn. When I was cast out of every place in the whole United States was calling me a heretic and a New Ager and a blasphemer, I had to leave the country to go and release all of this stuff. But this little lady right over here, Marilyn, she opened up her home, and we had mentoring classes in the very early days of the release of all of this. At that time, there were only 3 places in the United States that I would agree to speak. And she gave up a lot to open up her home for me to mentor people. I'm looking around now, and I'm seeing a few of you sitting out there right now. And right back here is sitting another precious friend of mine I've known for 35 years. Jimmy, you want to stand up just a second? This is Jimmy Reed, and we've been involved with one another since the early National Prayer, the World Prayer Center in Colorado Springs. So I've known her for 30 some years.
Well, hello, brothers and sisters. This is Kevin Sisti with Pellegrino Walk. Thank you for joining me today for another episode of The One New Man. And we've been talking about universalism, Christian universalism and inclusion, and using reference material from Nancy Cohen and Joyland Church in Green Mountain Falls, Colorado. And what you've just seen is another segment of the video where Nancy is teaching at that church, Joyland. The interesting thing that she says in this particular part of her teaching is she connects herself and another individual in the crowd with the World Prayer Center. So when thinking of universalism, I know, folks, it's hard to believe and it's hard to imagine that this is actually in the Christian form of the church, or what we're seeing in front of us that's calling itself Christian, right? The thing that's sucking everybody in and calling it revival and all these things. Well, there's a universalist stream in this part of Christianity. It's in the denominations as well, as we'll move forward and actually prove. But I keep talking about leaven in the lump, and that's basically what this is, and it will continue to leaven and grow as this false church continues. So Nancy Cohen referred to the World Prayer Center, the beginnings of the World Prayer Center, so I want to get into that right now. So the World Prayer Center in Colorado Springs opened in September 1998. It was a $5.5 million high-tech initiative by New Life Church, founded by Ted Haggard. And as we could see, Ted Haggard has had his problems. But the concept was to use internet and phone and fax networks to link a projected 50 million Christians across 120 nations for coordinated global prayer and evangelism. So it's interesting because during this time, the early 2000s, we see C. Peter Wagner starting to garner a lot of support for his New Apostolic Reformation. Of course, C. Peter Wagner right there in Colorado Springs. But as the digital age is coming on, this is really key. All of a sudden, Christians thought, wow, we can come together. It sounds like something that happened in the book of Genesis. I laugh at it, but it's pretty serious. So as the Christians start to figure out, wow, we can get together, a number of things happened at this time. We see global prayer movements, IHOP KC, 24/7 prayer out of Europe. All of a sudden, prayer networks are exploding. We have 9/11 happen, and all of a sudden, the IPC, International Prayer Connect, which was John Robb and is now under Jason Hubbard, the leadership of Jason Hubbard. Barb has been involved in these groups for years and knows Jason well. So all of this starts to blossom. But what I want to connect here, what's so very important to understand is Nancy Cohen, clearly a Universalist Christian, inclusionist, teaching at the Universalist Joyland Church, but was involved in the movements, was involved with groups like the World Prayer Center through a friend of hers as well that she introduces that we're going to look at right now. Well, folks, this is Dr. Jimmy Reed, and Nancy Cohen introduces her as a friend of 35 years. And I just want to show this connection real quick. So Dr. Jimmy Reed is the founder of Global Manifestations. Global Manifestations, interesting word, right? Located in Denver, Colorado. As a prophet, pastor, and overseer, she has ministered to thousands over the span of 28 years. But as we go down a little bit, you notice that she was ordained, starting here, as a prophet by Bishop Bill Heyman of the Christian International Apostolic Network. See names like Dutch Sheets from Harvest Fellowship, what used to be his church in Colorado Springs. And now Dr. Reed is currently the prophetic voice of Eagle Rock Community of Christian Leaders Global Network, with Bishop Eugene Reeves presiding. So she is in the middle of the NAR. I mean, she's completely in the NAR, and yet connected with a Christian Universalist like Nancy Cohen. So obviously they have the same beliefs. But folks, this is in the NAR. It's completely in the NAR. It's starting to sweep the NAR. We see the language. We've heard the language from Bill Johnson, from Chris Berglund, Great Communion Revival, with everything coming together, sin being diminished, and all the things. And that's what we have. A simple come and acknowledge Jesus somehow, and you don't have to repent. Just bring your shame. We've talked about that. So I want to clearly establish the connection. It's in, it's there. They can't deny it. So for 1 second, let's look at some of the affiliations. What leadership is saying about Dr. Jimmy Reed. Jimmy's a prophetic officer, a prayer general to the body of Christ. I highly recommend the service of this gifted woman of God who is faithful in the Holy Spirit to be a voice to this generation. That is Pat Allen from Prayer Shield International. As we let this play through, which it will, we're going to see some other ones too. And we see C. Peter Wagner talking about her as a powerful intercessor. And then Nancy Cohen, of course, giving her a little prop there. Then, of course, we have Dutch Sheets giving her an endorsement. And then Chuck Pierce, Global Harvest Ministries. And as you can see, this woman is well connected. And then we have Bobby Byerly of the World Prayer Center. Once again, folks, I just wanted to show the connections and show that universalism and inclusion is a leaven in the lump in this great mix of church we have out there. So we could see the connections. You've got Nancy Cohen connected with Dr. Jimmy Reed, all these connections, C. Peter Wagner, Dutch Sheets, the NAR as a whole, right? Now, let's look at some other connections and how this universalism is actually getting into the church. I wanted to pull up this article on Christian Universalism. It's just a Wikipedia document, and it talks about the different streams, the different flavors of universalism, and of course, what their beliefs are. What the history is, all that is super important, but I really want to get down to the modern types, which there are mainly 3 types according to Wikipedia. So let's get into those right now. So we have Evangelical Universalism, Charismatic Universalism, and Liberal Christian Universalism. So we're going to look at these. What we're looking at with Nancy Cohen and, of course, Jimmy Reed, and much of the NAR that is into it, is a charismatic form of it. So let's look first at this word, evangelical universalism. If you could only see my face right now. Evangelical. Interesting. Now, according to this article, the type of Christian universalism that departs the least from Orthodox or traditional Protestant Christian doctrine is evangelical Christian universalism, also called biblical or Trinitarian universalism. I'm sorry, it's hard to read this with a straight face because it is so unbiblical. Evangelical Universalists hold to conservative positions on most theological or doctrinal issues except for the doctrine of hell. Disagree with this completely, because if your idea of hell is that it doesn't exist or that it is a purgative type of place that we go to eventually get saved, that changes a lot of things in the Bible. This is pretty much what we're saying. If you diminish the consequences of whatever we do here on earth, it's going to diminish the idea of what sin is in the first place, or whether we're even sinners in the first place, and it's going to dumb down the gospel completely. And that's what's happened in the charismatic circles. No matter how you slice it, no matter what kind of stream it's actually in, evangelical, fundamental, charismatic, Pentecostal, universalist, blah, 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 it's going to affect other things. Again, except for the doctrine of hell, in which case they assert universal reconciliation instead of eternal torment. They tend to emphasize the substitutionary atonement of Jesus Christ for the sins of all humanity as the basis of their universalism. You could, of course, read on here, but I would just want to jump forward to this sentence right here. Evangelical Universalists derive a large part of their beliefs from evangelicalism and Reformed theology. Many of them come from an evangelical Christian background, but they may or may not identify with this movement and seek to remain with it. Well, they may not remain with it, but the beliefs continue with the individuals that were a part of it, and once again, get leavened right into the lump. So I think this is interesting here that some evangelical universalists avoid using the word universalism. I wonder why. To describe their beliefs, perhaps because of the negative connotations. I would agree with that. Negative connotations of this word among conservative Christians. Alternate terms that are in use among evangelical universalists include the larger hope or blessed hope and the victorious gospel. Isn't it funny how we change the theology and we switch things around and all we have to do is come up with a new name for it? Amazing. So really interesting. This is not just in the charismatic movement, the spirit-empowered movement, 650 million strong, only second to the Catholic Church. It's not just in there. It's in evangelical churches. Well, but under new names. And of course, as you're sitting there in the pew next to someone who has these beliefs, you just don't know. But yet, how do these beliefs actually affect the gospel? How do they affect our witness? If you don't believe in hell and you've diminished sin, it seems to me the entire narrative of the Bible changes. So evangelical Protestants that have thought, okay, we're safe from this in our tiny little corners and we can escape and we don't have to look at all the stuff that's out there. Well, it's inside your churches too. And as we've seen from the beginning, Nancy Cohen talking about the World Prayer Center, kind of connecting her stream of universalism, which we're going to go even further into Nancy Cohen because it's much more. It's just beyond belief that all of this is in the church. But yet the Bible says that in the last days there will be a falling away. So let's look at charismatic universalism. Well, some Christians with a background in the charismatic movement or Pentecostalism have developed a version of universalism which could be called charismatic Christian Universalism. Charismatic Universalists usually do not call their theology universalism, just like those evangelicals, right? It's amazing. But no, they commonly refer to their specific beliefs by the terms reconciliation, shorthand for universal reconciliation, or the doctrine of apokatastasis. And interesting here, this is in Wikipedia, and sonship. Do you see that, folks? Do you see the word sonship? Once again, with the One New Man series, we've been saying for a long time that sonship is the new age, right? We've done all kinds of videos on this, showed how this is esoteric. Sonship is esoteric. Alice Bailey. We've compared it to Gnosticism. We've compared it to Kabbalah. We've done all of that. We're going to continue doing that as we move forward. But reconciliation, another word for universalism, meaning there's no hell, and let's diminish the gospel and let's find other ways that we can bring esoteric teachings into the church. Well, that seems to be the new word, and look at how it's connected with sonship, shorthand for manifest sonship. Lou Engle, Dean Briggs, Chris Berglund, which is a variant of the doctrine of theosis. Again, folks, we've been talking about this for so long, yet it's in Wikipedia. I didn't even know it was in Wikipedia. It's so interesting to find this information. The term Feast of Tabernacles is used by some charismatic universalists as a term for their post-Pentecostal spiritual tradition, reflecting a symbolic interpretation of this Jewish festival. Again, folks, what they do is take the symbolism of the Feast of Tabernacles, and they move us from Passover to Tabernacles, Passover being the beginning and Tabernacles being the end. And of course, it's always joyous going into Tabernacles. It's always joyous going into the Promised Land. But it's all a symbolic use, which is not biblical, which they place on top of the New Testament, which clearly says that there's going to be a falling away at the end of the age. We're experiencing that right now. So the symbolic interpretation of this Jewish festival as an entrance into fuller knowledge. They often call it fullness. Nancy Cohen will call it that in her teaching, which is egregious, what she actually says. Obviously, it's in the evangelical churches, and it's in the charismatic churches. And Barb and I have been saying it's in global missions as we're trying to somehow bring the gospel to the world, but doing it through a body of believers that believe different things of salvation and believe in different Jesuses. So which one are we bringing? So charismatic universalism is marked by its emphasis on theosis. We've been talking with Steve Montgomery about this. The idea that the return of Christ is a body of perfected human beings who are the manifested sons of God, instead of a literal return of the person of Jesus. The idea that these sons will reign on the earth and transform all other human beings from sin to perfection during an age that is coming soon, and the absolute sovereignty of God, the non-existence or severe limitation of human free will, and the inevitable triumph of God's plan of universal reconciliation. But once again, notice that they're going to take human beings from sin to perfection. Well, that's what I'm talking about with universalism. If there's no hell, if there's no consequences, sin is diminished, and we can be perfected. We could be manifest sons. Well, many charismatic universalists meet in house churches or do not belong to a church at all. Most of the evidence of universalism existing as a school of thought within the charismatic movement is found in large numbers of internet-based ministries that are informally networked with one another. Well, we've touched on the evangelicals and how it's in their churches and denominations. We've hit pretty hard on the Charismatics, the Spirit-empowered movement, Nancy Cohen, the NAR. Well, if you think you're safe just sliding more to the left, that's a problem too. So let's look at the left-leaning side. Liberal Christian Universalists include some of the members of mainline Protestant denominations. Some people influenced by the New Age and New Thought movements. The New Age of Alice Bailey and New Thought of Mesmer and how that's morphed into positive confession. And then some people in the emerging church movement, some Unitarian Universalists who continue to follow Jesus, so to speak, right, as their primary spiritual teacher, and some Christians from other religious backgrounds. Liberal Christian Universalism emphasizes the all-inclusive love of God and tends to be more open to finding truth and value in non-Christian spiritual traditions compared to the attitude of other forms of Christian Universalism, while remaining generally Christ-centered. In contrast to Evangelical Universalism, liberal Christian Universalism views the Bible as an imperfect human document containing divine revelations, is not necessarily Trinitarian, and often downplays or rejects blood atonement theology in its view of the crucifixion of Jesus. I believe Brian Zond is one of those. Brian McLaren would be another one on that spectrum. And then some liberal Christian Universalists believe in mystical philosophies such as panentheism and process theology. Panentheism, a little bit different than pantheism. Pantheism, of course, is all is God. Panentheism is all is in God. A little bit different take. Of course, all a part of the left-leaning liberal side of Universalism. So panentheism, process theology, Gnostic or New Age ideas such as the pre-existence and reincarnation of the soul, and New Thought ideas such as the law of attraction. Now, the Unitarian Universalist Christian Fellowship, and of course this is different than the Unity Church or Unitarian Universalists as a whole. This is a different sect. Now, this is an organization for liberal Christian Universalists, especially those who belong to the Unitarian Universalist Association. The Unity Church is a liberal Christian denomination which teaches some Universalist beliefs. So these are some of the things we're trying to make believers aware of. It seems like no matter where you go, you're going to get these theologies. You are going to get these deceptions. They're just flat out everywhere in the church. And if they're not being spoken by the pastor, a lot of times they're assumed by, maybe it could be elders or other individuals in the congregation. Our point is a snowball is rolling. We said this in the beginning of the One New Man series, and it's coalescing as it rolls downhill, and it's collecting everything in its path. And folks were saying that this is what the biblical narrative is as far as biblical prophecy, certainly in the New Testament. So we so often get accused of pessimism, right? You guys are just such pessimists, always talking about how bad it's going to get, how horrible it is. Why not have a little positivity? Well, I think this is very positive as we look at it, because we don't reside here, folks. We are citizens of heaven. We could wake up every morning and the whole world is moving in this direction. That snowball is coalescing. But yet we could look up and say, our redemption draweth nigh. Jesus is near to our hearts. Jesus is here with us. Jesus will protect us no matter what happens to the outside of us. What an incredible blessing. What an incredible joy for us who are looking for a home that's not here. Now, I want to end here as we go into the last sentence or two, and of course, we will be talking about the Catholic Church. This says the liberal Catholic Church believes in universal salvation. Within its articles of faith, it declares, we believe that God is love and power and truth and light, that perfect justice rules this world, that all his sons shall one day reach his feet, however far they stray. Now, the liberal Catholic Church is not part of the Roman Catholic Church. It's an independent denomination that originated in 1916 from the old Catholic Church in England. So I guess the Catholics are off the hook. Except for this.
On this final day in Singapore, September 13th, concluding his trip to Asia and the Pacific, Pope Francis spoke to young people at an interreligious gathering.
Tutte le religioni sono un cammino per arrivare a Dio.
Because every religion is a way to arrive at God.
Dirò una comparazione, sono come diverse lingue, diversi idiomi per arrivare lì.
Sort of a comparison, an example would be they're sort of like different languages in order to arrive at God.
Ma Dio è Dio per tutti.
But God is God for all.
E come Dio è Dio per tutti, noi siamo tutti figli di Dio.
And if God is God for all, then we're all sons and daughters of God.
Ma il mio Dio è più importante del tuo.
But my God is more important than your God.
È vero quello?
Is that true?
C'è un solo Dio lì. E noi sono idiomi, cammino, lingue per arrivare a Dio.
There's only one God, and each of us is a language, so to speak, in order to arrive at God.
Qualcuno è Sikh, qualcuno musulmano, qualcuno hindi, qualcuno cristiano,
Hindu,
ma sono
Christian.
diversi cammini.
There are different paths.
Understood?
Well, understood, Pope Francis. They're all paths to God. So we've been using Joyland Church and Nancy Cohen to take us places. And it certainly has taken us places so far. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Because this one new man, and I did get on this from our relationship with Dean Briggs and going through the communion revivals and all the things, looking specifically at Chris Berglund's theology of the one new man and how it was going to be birthed by the Great Communion Revival. This one new man, this man-child company, this is what we're talking about here, right? We're looking at the Charismatic Universalism and the manifested sons of God, that corporate body that is going to be perfected. Well, how do we get perfected? Well, we've got to eliminate hell, and we've got to diminish sin somehow. That's what they're doing, and it's getting in everywhere. So, this is a great example. Pope Francis, of course, all roads lead to heaven. Well, that's just the liberal Catholic Church. Brother, that's not the totality of the Catholic Church. Well, you heard it from the Pope, so I think it's pretty clear what's happening. Well, thank you folks for watching today. I promised we were going to get into a conversation with Barb on FTT, finishing the task, because as you know, Rick Warren has been meeting with the Pope, and some of our friends have gone to meet the Pope. Well, like Jason Hubbard from the International Prayer Connect. He was there in Italy with a few other of our friends that felt like this was necessary for this period of time. But folks, how many times can we warn these leaders that you're going in the wrong direction? So now we simply go to the sheep and say, folks, here's what's happening. Thank you so much for watching today, and we will get into FTT and a conversation with Barb. She was on the FTT prayer team, finishing the task with Rick Warren, and for about 20 years. So we're going to find out a little bit more about that and how all of this mess is being pulled together in the guise of John 17 unity, but it's universal to the core. God bless you, and thank you for watching today.